Good morning, welcome to the Celtic Way morning briefing live. Slightly later than Bill, but me and Alison managed to drag herself out of bed and square herself up, yada yada yada. Obviously, to talk about all things Celtic. Alison, first and foremost, did you have a good Christmas?
I did indeed, thank you. Yourself?
I was self-isolating, as you know, so it wasn't the greatest. Let's put it that way. But I'm sure I'll celebrate at some point later on. We'll get there. Anyway, Celtic signed off before the winter break with a win in Perth. Alison, makeshift side that they put out. That's the kind of the 6 months tenure of Ange came and gone, and you look at it and you think he's doing okay. The report card would say doing all right. First trophy in the bag, 6 points behind Rangers in the title race, but plenty of promise, and obviously Europe after Christmas as well. So lots to be positive about.
Yeah, I think there are elements to be positive about. I think it was always going to take a bit of time when you looked at what he inherited and how much work had to be done. I think time will tell just how important that Premier Sports Cup win was 10 days ago or so. I think it could have been the catalyst to go on to further success, although the same applies, I think, to the drop points in Paisley. I think 6 points is quite a cushion. I don't think it's insurmountable by any means, but what it does do is invite an element of pressure, an extra element of pressure there into games when Celtic know they just can't afford to slip at all. So I think what it does do is frame the next game against Rangers in a particular light, because it becomes very much a must-win game for Celtic, I think, because if you come out of that with a win, then really it blows the title race wide open, assuming, of course, that both teams are winning up until that point. But yeah, I think it's been a decent start. I think you can see flashes and glimpses of the kind of football that he wants to play, of the philosophy that Ange Postecoglou wishes to bring to Celtic. I think there have been points over the last 6 months when Celtic have looked fairly devastating from middle to front. I think you can see that they've been shorn of some of that menace without a fully fit Kyogo and without Jota, and also I think without James Forrest, because I think he could have a key role to play in that too when he's also fully fit. But you've certainly seen elements of it in terms of how quickly Celtic can move the ball and the speed they have going forward. And also too, I think there have been glimpses with the last minute goals, which offers an indication of a resilience that maybe wasn't always there last season. I think they look less tentative. I think they look a bit more confident, but I would qualify that by saying I still think they're very frail at the back. I still think there is a vulnerability about Celtic, particularly when it comes to defending set pieces. I think Christopher Julian, when and if he's back fit, I think could be significant in coming back into the back four and just adding a bit of steel to that.
Yep, I totally agree, Alison. So, how many players do you think? I mean, ideally, would he want to bring in all sorts of numbers, bringing in 6 and 7 players, stuff like that? But Celtic traditionally in January have never really done that, have they?
No, I don't think it'll be as many as that. I think possibly 2, maybe 3 will come in. I think that the deal's almost done to bring in another striker from the J League. I think it's a case of dotting I's and crossing T's where that one is concerned. I think he does need another striker. I think you've seen that over the last few weeks when Celtic have been playing without the focal point of a recognised centre forward. I think they've got away with it. If you look beyond that night in St Mirren, I think they've managed to claw their way through it without maybe the damage that might have been done. But I think you can see that there's a need for another forward. Interestingly for me, I wonder who, if anyone, might go out. I think the squad is probably quite bloated in terms of numbers. I just wonder if there might be a few that go the other way too.
Were you surprised to see Barkas come back in, or was that just a needs must the other day? Because to all intents and purposes, he was one of those ones that could have been, as you say, on the way out.
I think it's very much a needs must. I think both Joe Hart and Scott Bain had been affected by, if rumours are to be believed, I think both of them had tested positive. I think that was the reason for Vasilis Barkas coming back in, although I did note...
Know the feeling, Alison, I know the feeling.
Well, I did note with some interest that Ange Postecoglou did not mention the word COVID once. And amongst the talk of a chaotic Christmas and preparing for a game, so numerically disadvantaged, not once did he actually mention the word. But I think that was the reason for Barkas being in between the sticks. But I wouldn't anticipate that you would see too much of him. And like you, I think if there is a move that's suitable to both parties, now when the window opens in the next few days, I think it would be a sensible move for both. I think financially for Celtic it would be good for him to go elsewhere, and I think for the player himself he'll probably be itching to play on a more regular basis and just find his feet and rediscover a bit of confidence after what's been probably a very demoralising 18 months for him.
I tell you what, I'm hoping, Alison, that the 3 Japanese players actually sign, because we seem to have been talking about them for months and months and months. And so hopefully Celtic can get deals for the 3 of them over the line and yet to see what they're actually like.
Yeah, there's certainly been a lot of talk, and I think some of that's been fueled in 2 aspects. I think one by the manager saying that it makes sense for him to go back to a league where he knows and an environment where he's seen players up at close range and seen what they can do in games, and he knows the system that he wants to play at Celtic, the personnel he has there, and who fits into that. And secondly, I think his hand is probably strengthened there just by the success of Kyogo and how quickly he assimilated into the team and into the club and into a city. And I don't think that's a given when you're bringing players from one culture to another, when it can be such a huge change. I think it's fairly extraordinary how quickly Kyogo settled in, and I think he comes across, and I know we've spoken about this before, but he comes across as a very enthusiastic boy, very, very bubbly and very energetic. I think he endeared himself to people very, very quickly. I'm not sure how much that comes down to personality and how much it might be different for other players, but certainly another way of looking at it is if you have a small community of them, they can help one another.
Do you think the break came at the right time for Celtic, Alison, in terms of just trying to re-energise ourselves and then bring in reinforcements and then go at it full tilt to see where they are in terms of the title race from May?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that the break worked for Celtic just now. I think they're on their knees in terms of injuries. I think when you look at the players and you look at the positions of the players, they all seem to be coming very much from middle to front in terms of the injuries sustained. I think they really are. Without key players, I think you can't underestimate how crucial Jota has been to Celtic this season. I think he's dug them out of games. He's been there in terms of being the creative catalyst to maybe find something out of nothing. And I'm thinking of that game at Pittodrie. I'm thinking of even the draw against Dundee United. He was the player that looked most likely to find a goal. I think he hit the woodwork 3 times that day. I think he's been massive. I think his understanding with Kyogo has been integral to how Celtic play from middle to front. So I think having both of them out for a period of time was obviously a hindrance. I think Kyogo is quite clearly still nowhere near 100% fit. So you would like to think that the next few weeks affords an opportunity to really allow players a rest. And I think for the likes of Kyogo, what you have to remember is he's been playing non-stop now for 12 months. When you look at how the J League works in terms of the season, so it's quite clear he probably needs some time off. He needs just to recuperate physically and maybe mentally and then come back. And I think there would be a few players who are carrying injuries that you would like to think would then be in a position to come back stronger. But aside from that, I agree that playing games with no supporters or with a handful of supporters in, it's a soulless experience in a big stadium. I think it's a different experience altogether. It's nothing like the same energy or the same tension that you get with fans in a stadium. And I think anything that supports a move to get back to some kind of normality where that concerned has to be applauded.
The manager made his point clear on that as well the other day when he kind of more or less channeled his inner Jock Stein and said if you're watching football without fans, as you said, it's a different sport. You're watching different football from me altogether. So, and I also like that about him. Also, like as you said, the fact that he's not looked to make excuses this season for anything that's happened to Celtic or any bad luck or misfortune or injuries that have, befell the club. So he's just got on with it. His mantra is get on with it, roll with it, you deal with it, and again, I got that mentality into his players, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think that's just part of his personality too. I think it's just his background and the kind of way that you approach life as much as anything. But I think, he's been fairly dry at times with some of his comments, quite amusing. We're talking about not getting violins out the other night, and when he was counting up the number of injuries. And I think I don't think there really is another way to approach it. I don't think you can afford to sit and feel sorry for yourself in a situation like that. I think when there are games to be played, I think it's about getting on with them as best you can with the players that you have. And by and large, they've managed to scrape through. I know a lot of the games have been won by 1-goal margins and maybe just getting over the line and then coming a cropper with that kind of performance against St Mirren. It was an odd night. It was just so little movement that night. I think St Mirren had packed their own half and were quite happy for Celtic to play the ball around the box with so little penetration coming. But I think by and large they have managed to get through it. They'll take stock now, and what you will see is that Celtic's hand gets stronger from here on in now, with players coming back and the opportunity to go and bring players in.
Now, the 3 Japanese players you touched upon there, that they'll have played a lot of football. Does the same go for them, Maeda, Deguchi and Haggerty, that they might need rest time as well? Or if they go away on international duty, something like that?
Well, they're certainly coming on the back of a full season, so they're coming having played a full campaign in the J League. I'm sure now what would be their norm would be to take a rest, take a break, and then go back into pre-season. So I think you have to be expecting that. I think the manager will know that more than anybody. He'll appreciate the physical demands that have been placed upon him over the last few months and what lies in wait in Scottish football, especially given the way that he wishes his players to play. I think it's a fairly high-intensity training regime, as well as the way that they press and play in games. So I think he'll appreciate that more than anyone, and it may be that if they are coming in, it's on the back of a week or two's break just before they pick up, because having played a full season, they're not liable to need a massive pre-season. They're not going to come in needing to play catch-up in terms of fitness.
And again, talking about injuries, Alison, David Turnbull, and if what's to believe, could be out for a couple of months as well. So it is important to bring in players in this window. This window could be crucial to Celtic in terms of the £40 million bounty that's available at the end of May.
Of course, I think absolutely. I think it really can aid their quest to pull back that 6-point gap and try and put pressure under Rangers. I agree with you. I think when you look towards the end of the season, it is that rare opportunity to bank and guarantee yourself entry into the group stages of the Champions League, which at the minute looks entirely plausible. It looks as though that's the way it will be. And the financial rewards that come with that are huge. I think we can all appreciate that. And I think just trying to get the squad right and the balance of the squad right is key to doing that. I think, as I said, 6 points I don't think is insurmountable. Not when you look at the games that are still to be played. But what you can see just now is where reinforcements are needed. David Turnbull looks as though he's going to be out for another 2 months too. And I think at times you've had to bring players in and request that they do a job in positions that are not their natural position. And you've seen that repeatedly over the last few weeks. So I think it does point to the fact that, while numerically Celtic are strong in squad numbers, I think there's just not the same quality and like for like in different positions.
And also the job that the manager has done in the 6 months, as you say, it has strengthened his hand in terms of going to the board and saying, I want X, Y and Z. The first trophy is in the bag. They're very competitive now at the top of the table. You'd probably think he would be more competitive with the points that they've dropped in the league, but they're still there and will be there and thereabouts come May. So it is a chance for the board to say, okay, there you go, Ange. Let's have a tilt at this.
Yeah, I don't know if that's entirely the way it works, but I appreciate what you're saying in terms of if there are financial resources available to strengthen in this window, then I think it makes sense to bring players in. I think it can be crucial for the run-in. I think it can aid his hand significantly. I think it offers Celtic an opportunity to strengthen, because you have seen glimpses of what the squad are capable of over the last few months, and I do think there hasn't been a period yet where he's had a full quota of players available to him. There's always been pretty big players out. I think when he came in and Forrest was still out and Julian was still out. I think these are fairly significant players to be without in terms of their experience. So I think you have to remember that you do have players of quality to come back, but at the same time, I think there is a clear need to reinforce in this window. And he has only had one window to try and put his own stamp on the squad and to bring in players that are his players. So I think it would always take maybe 2 or 3 windows at least until you see the evolution of that.
The AGSC Tech comes in. Alison said it's a B+ grade for Ange using the old O grade system. I'm familiar with the old O grade system. We need an A grade to win the league, though. I would agree with that, no doubt. If you're old money, Alison, you'll understand O grades.
Indeed. I crossed over, I'm more standard grades. But,
well, you standard grades, right? Fair enough for you.
Slightly younger.
Yes, after I'll concede that. But yes, O grades was a simple A, B, or C. So AGSC Tech says a B+. That's quite a good mark. Probably would take an A to win the title, to be fair. And Feed the Bear comes in and says, give them nothing, make sure we win this league. I think that's kind of the majority of Celtic fans feeling that, they want to win this title because of the riches that it ensues, and they don't want to give Rangers any chance to sort of get themselves back up to a kind of financial level where they're more than competing. Would you agree with that, Alison?
Without question. I also think, though, you would have to say it's been very seamless for Rangers with Giovanni Van Bronckhorst coming in. I think Celtic fans might have been optimistic or hoping for a dip between the transition from one manager to another, but I think, if anything, Rangers have actually looked a bit more balanced, a bit more settled. I think they've been fairly consistent, sometimes grinding results out. I'm thinking of that Dundee United game, just getting over the line again and no more. I think Celtic do have the quality to go toe-to-toe with them. I think it would have been quite an intriguing game on the second had it gone ahead in normal circumstances, because both were going into it in fairly similar veins of form. I thought it would have been quite eye-opening to see how both got on. But obviously now you're going to have to wait another month for that one. And I think if Celtic are at their strongest, I think when they have players back, if they bring in reinforcements, I think they are capable of challenging Rangers. I think they should be capable of beating Celtic beating Rangers on their own turf. I think when you look at the players that Celtic have, they have the capability of hurting Rangers defensively, of getting in behind. The one concern I think that would be there is that Celtic do still look quite vulnerable defensively, particularly at set pieces. And I think it could be quite significant too if, as anticipated, both Tom Rogic and Kyogo miss that game because of their respective international commitments, because I think both have been hugely instrumental this season. I think Tom Rogic's maybe enjoying his best season since that Invincibles campaign under Brendan Rodgers. I think he's been excellent for Celtic throughout this term, and I think he would be a fairly significant loss, because on his day I think he's the most graceful and the most elegant midfielder in the country.
David Bradley comes in and says, morning David, need to put pressure on them. Yep, I guess that's the way Celtic fans are feeling, and I agree with Alison. I think Tom Rogic is having a wonderful season, that the sum of the parts is now fitting together, and on that glue pot McDermott Park surface, I said the other day in another pot, he could have played with clogs on. He was that good. He is now showing what he brings to the table, and for Celtic, as you say, it would be a vital miss if he was on international duty for the Rangers game in February. But that'll all come out in the wash as we move forward. What's your own grading for Ange Postecoglou in the 6 months, Alison? What would you give him? Standing grades, O grades, whatever you want to give him. You let me know.
I think I'd go for a B too. I think there have been elements that have been laudable. There have been some quality elements to the way that Celtic have played. I think there's room for improvement.
Excellent. I would go the same as AGS Tech. I would give him a B+, bordering on A. I'm sure he'll get an A if he brings the title back. He'll get a statue, in fact, if he brings the title back to Celtic Park this season. And on that positive note, thank you, Alison, for your contribution. Always enjoy it. And thanks, guys, for your comments as well. I try to read as many as we can. Just sort of get wrapped up in the chat today, but thanks a lot. Cheers, Alison, and have a good day, guys.
Take care.
Thank you.